Hey friend, and welcome back to season 2 of the Between the Pages podcast. I am so excited that you are here and you decided to join us for this conversation today. It is in all goodness as we continue to navigate life in between the valleys and the mountaintops. Our team is so excited for this season as we have more topics, more guests, and truthfully, our team is learning alongside with you of how we can intentionally pursue Jesus in everything that life brings. We are so excited to welcome back Lakeview Covenant Church as our season 2 sponsor for the episode. So get comfortable, grab a cup of coffee, grab a Bible, put in your headphones, and join us for today's conversation.
Well, welcome back to the Between the Pages podcast, and it is a very exciting week this week. It is our 3rd anniversary.
We are 3 years old!
Yay! Yay! So this week, for this episode, we thought that it'd be really fun to interview Rebecca and just ask her some questions about Boldly Seeking, since this was her project for a long time before it even started, and it is so awesome to get to see her start this and grow it and get to be a part of it now. So, Rebecca, we are so happy to have you here.
Welcome to your own podcast.
Yeah, welcome to your
Welcome
podcast.
to my own podcast. Oh my gosh, I'm in like the hot seat. And I'm like those watching online, like I'm literally in the middle of these two right now. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure. Liz is going through some of the questions she's going to ask me. And I was like, these are deep.
They're good.
These are deep. And as like, you know, we're coming up, this is year 3 now. And there's been so much that has like changed, whether good or bad. Lots of things have happened. We've done a lot of things. We've accomplished a lot of things. And I can't stop smiling. Like, it's just being able to reflect and just have such incredible people alongside. So I'm excited. Yes. I'm nervous for these questions, but I'm ready.
All right. Well, let's just start with, why don't you just share some of these accomplishments over the past year, over the past 3 years that like you have gotten to experience in your little project?
Yeah. Okay. So the last year, I would say, has been a very formative year of Boldly Seeking. I remember when we met January of 2022, we really had this focus and idea that, you know, we've been such an online base that now it's time to get back into the community and to give back to the community now that like COVID is kind of has gone through its course, and being able to connect with local leaders and local youth groups and pastors and ministry leaders. We were on the crew retreat in October, and I think October was kind of like our first little mini tour that we ever did. We literally had some place that we were at every single week, and it was so fun. And yes, it was so exhausting, but being able to do something like that, like ultimately where we hope to go, of being able to travel and just share the word of Jesus and to challenge individuals to be bold in their faith, has been super cool. We just announced in February. So in February, we were introduced, and I was asked to speak at a national conference, a Faith in Action conference, which was such an exciting process to be a part of, and just being able to continually connect with different individuals, and being able to keep up relationships from previous guest writers and guest speakers and guests on the podcast too. And some of them have become literally my best friend. One of them now lives in Florida, and she just texted me. I told her, I was like, hey, I really want to go to this conference. Let's go. And she's like, yeah, so I was going to call you, but my due date is literally the week after. And I was like, what? You were pregnant? That's so exciting. Which, like, just having those connections too, especially over the last 3 years even, and having people like Elizabeth, Jenny, Meg, Alicia, being a part of the team and just pouring so much energy into it over the last 3 years, is also a really big accomplishment. I would say that you find the people that believe in what you're doing, that want to also sacrifice their time and energy to support you, but also feel ownership of that too.
I feel like it's super rewarding. Like, you're in the center of it, and sometimes you don't see all the accomplishments around you because you're in the center of it, and you only see like what you still need to work on going ahead, and you kind of forget what you've seen and done in the past. And with Elizabeth and I coming on a little bit later in the season, it was just like, wow, look at what they've done already. And then I know I'm excited about the future, and I know Elizabeth is too.
For sure.
Just seeing like the inspiration behind your passion project, and like how we can just like keep igniting your flame a little bit more and seeing that just blossom throughout this fall and into this winter and even this summer coming up too is just super exciting.
Yeah. And you mentioned a little bit now about your team, and we are on your team. So how did you kind of pick your team? Why did you choose the people you did? And how have you grown it, and how do you hope to keep growing it?
Yeah. So I guess to kind of go back to the baby days of Boldly Seeking, my friend Meg and I, we would do these parking lot hangs during COVID. So we would meet in the church parking lot, and we would each sit on top of our cars to maintain distance. And we just talked about how Jesus was moving in our lives. And, you know, I would say during COVID was the best year for me in terms of my personal relationship with Jesus, because the world literally stopped. And so, like, what else was there to do? Like, I'm going to read my Bible and, like, be with Jesus. And so I was talking to Meg of just, like, the things that Jesus has been speaking to me. And I started writing little blog posts and would just share them with her. And eventually we kind of came across this idea of Boldly Seeking. And I later then had met with my friend Alicia, who lives in the cities, and keeping in mind that Meg and Alicia never had met each other. They didn't know each other at the time. And so it was like two completely opposite people. And I was sharing the same kind of blog post with her and just being like, yeah, like, I don't know, maybe I'll start a blog or something. She's like, yeah, start a blog. And I was like, I don't really want to start a blog with just a blog. Like, everyone has a blog right now. Like, I want something that's going to sustain past once the world opens back up. And it was probably in the span of like a week of that I had this idea of Boldly Seeking, and was like, let's start a ministry. Now, I know this sounds weird, but like, I brought it up individually to Meg and individually to Alicia, and both of them said yes. And I'm saying yes is something that they knew nothing about. They were just like, yeah, like, I want to be a part of this because I also love writing and I also love sharing what Jesus is doing in my life. And then they ended up meeting, and now the three of us are like best friends. And then as we kind of continued to grow, we realized, okay, we need to bring on to kind of help this idea of maintaining what we're creating, but also continue to grow. We're like, we need more people. Yeah. And so then looking at Jenny and be like, Jenny, like, we just love your heart and passion for Jesus, and be like, do you want to join us and join the sisterhood that we're wanting to create just within our own team? And then I would say probably like a couple months after you joined is when Elizabeth joined, because she was very active on TikTok, and TikTok was a real big thing when she joined. And I was like, I know nothing about TikTok. And I was like, she is like the perfect person to take over some social media stuff. Yeah. And you're like in that like age range too, where social media is very prevalent in your daily life. Yes. And so then we brought on Elizabeth as just this kind of like spitfire full of energy, just like a little sister, really. And what's beautiful about our team is, like, although like we aren't always together, like, it's a sisterhood, knowing that we can always go to one another and be like, hey, do you need something? And also building a team where it's like, if you need to take a step back, take the step back and refill, because you have a team of sisters behind you that's going to fill the gap until you're ready to come back.
That's what I love the most about our group and our team, is that just like whenever you have a prayer request or like, hey, I'm having a bad day, we just like add each other to the group chat, and we know that people are backing each other up and thinking about each other throughout the day and praying for each other and coming alongside one another when it gets hard. And I think that tight community helps like the rest of the Boldly Seeking community, because we have built a foundation in friendship on the Lord, and it's not crumbling because it's in the Lord. And I feel like that's kind of speaking for like the foundations of Boldly Seeking too, because it's just so rooted in scripture and what God's will is and his purpose. And it's just incredible to see that continue on.
For sure. Well, so we just turned 3. So in the past 3 years...
We're a toddler.
We're a toddler.
In the past 3 years, what are some of your biggest takeaways and your like happiest moments in this ministry? Sorry, that was a big question right there.
This is a big question. Oh goodness. Oh wow. There's been a lot of happy moments. I think I remember the first time we released our first team written devotional. which I think was the Be Bold study that Meg and I wrote. And it was such an accomplishment. Like, I'm not going to lie, but like writing, and Jenny, you've been a part of a devotional too. Like, writing a devotional takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. And it's so rewarding at the end to be like, this is written work and my part of my story that is now out into the world. And I would say that was one big happy moment. Another couple, I guess, like just kind of overall is just the opportunities that we've had to speak and be with local groups, like community groups and youth groups, and just like sharing our love of Jesus with them, whether that's in worship or in teaching. The Faith in Action Conference was, I would say, a huge pivotal point for our team. Just knowing that it's like, hey, like we're working on getting to the dreams and goals that we have, and just being able to feel confident. I would say now I feel confident of just like messaging random like pastors and be like, hey, I'd love to sit down and just share a little bit about our heart behind Boldly Seeking, of like, we want to help equip your students and your young adults to be bold in their faith, whatever that may look like. And then I would just say too, like, happiest moments, like our team retreat this last January was such a beautiful weekend of dreaming and praying and just fellowship, and just continuing to know, like, okay, the more as we continue to grow our team, like how sweet those weekends are going to become, especially if there's people that aren't necessarily here locally in Duluth. Like I think of Meg and Alicia, and although they couldn't be there that weekend, just the moment that when we all get to be together is going to be such a beautiful time.
For sure. Yeah, and I think we have a pretty solid team, and it's really great, and I'm glad you got to share some of your takeaways. But in sticking with that, what is the favorite blog or podcast episode, now that we've had a few, that you have been a part of?
What are these
like
questions?
The 50 blogs that
Out
you've
of
written?
the 3 years worth of vlogs that we have,
or one of your top ones. If you have many, I'm sure you do. One of the ones that was very good for you.
Can I do one podcast episode and one blog?
Whatever you want.
You're making
Okay,
up the
it's up
rules.
to you.
Okay, my favorite blog post that I've ever written was Will You Believe I'm Still Good? Which I released, I honestly can't remember. It was last year, I know that for sure. But it was talking about Psalms 10, and just the fact of like when hard things happen, like what are we going to do? Are we going to just be in sadness and sorrow for the rest of our life? Or are we going to turn to the fact that we know the God that we serve, we know the characteristics, and we know that he is faithful and he is good and he'll be faithful to us? And I wrote that actually, so I had preached on that a Sunday, literally this Sunday before my aunt passed away from cancer. So it was literally 4 days before, and I didn't know that I was literally going to be preaching to myself at that point in time, because 4 days later my aunt passed away. And I had watched back on that service, and I was like, of course, like God knew. And so that has always been a blog that has been super near and dear to my heart, that I ended up taking that sermon and my just experience of healing from my aunt's passing to then having the blog post come out that spring of just a reflection on all of that. So I would say that is my favorite blog post.
Okay.
My favorite podcast episode, there's so many. I would say my favorite one, this could be a favorite one, but I feel very much in the hot seat, so I'm like sweating right now. Our Valentine's Day episode was
That's probably one
really
of my favorites
good.
too, and I wasn't even in that one, just listening to it.
I think it was like one of our more like just super vulnerable, real raw episodes that it was just kind of like, wow, this is things that people are walking through right now that are so relatable, but also like gave me a chance to reflect on my past and my healing from past relationships, to then just like feeling so hopeful and joyful for the future.
Sure. That was a good one. That was very
That was
fun.
really
Yeah,
good.
that was a really good one. Okay, so now talking about the podcast, and we've talked a little bit about how you started Boldly Seeking. How did you go from a blog and this team and the in-person stuff to this podcast now?
That's actually a really hard question, because I don't think there was ever really like not like, I wouldn't say a confirmation, but like I want to do this because of this. It was a more like, you know what, like, we have so much content, like, let's bring it to a different medium where we can be with people. And I think a lot of what, for us, for Boldly Seeking especially, is, like, we are walking through all of this with everybody. Like, just because we are a part of a ministry, just because I'm on a stage preaching, or just because we're putting out all this content, doesn't mean that we're better than anyone else. Like, we're walking through all of this as we're releasing it. And so I think for the podcast, like, this concept of, like, we want to be with people and we want to be there for them and with them, was kind of like, what is the one thing that everybody does? And it's probably listen to music. And podcasts have become a very big trend in the last year, where I was like, you know what, like, let's be with people where they can hear our voices more, and to be able to have content that is not only written but more visual and audible, so that you can listen to it in the car and take Jesus in between the pages of life. Really, like, the podcast is called Between the Pages because we live a lot of our life in just the day to day. And, you know, you flip a page and it could be like the next chapter of, like, a move or a new relationship, or you're getting married, or a new job. And, like, that's a big thing. You're like, God, thank you. Or, like, the next chapter could be, you know, I had a breakup or a death in the family, or I'm hitting rock bottom, or I'm struggling with my faith and identity, and you're like, God, where are you? But it's like, what about from chapter to chapter? Like, all the pages between the chapter, just the everyday walk of life. That's like, okay, like, let's be in the everyday walk of life with everybody else. So that's kind of like how the podcast started, was just kind of this idea of, like, what does that look like, and how can we be there more for people?
For sure. I love that. I love hearing your heart behind it more. I mean, we've heard a lot about it, but it's really cool to be able to talk to you about it. So, are there any verses that, as you were starting Boldly Seeking, as you were going through this,
Bible.
Yeah,
I was like, can I see the website?
that you were maybe just confirmation for you in knowing that this is, like, the path you wanted to take, or whatever it may be, verses that have spoken to you through this, I guess I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I would say, so a couple things is, when it talks about, like, when talking about confirmation of Boldly Seeking, you know, when I initially had the idea of Boldly Seeking, and I talked with Meg and Alicia separately, and I was like, hey, do you want to do this? Within 2 weeks, did we have a month's worth of content, a full website. We had content up, pictures taken in 2 weeks, which is honestly probably literally unheard of for starting something. We converted my music page to the Boldly Seeking page, and, like, we were able to, like, gain an online community, I would say, fairly quickly, and we're still continuing to grow that. But it was like, that was a confirmation. I was like, okay, like, when you are in line with what God has for your life, that is when, like, he's going to make it known, and he's going to open the door, and it is going to be so, so clear. And I would say that was probably one of the moments. Let's see if I can find. I wrote a blog post a while ago. It was, like, our first ever blog post, and it was the heart and ministry behind Boldly Seeking. And I'm going to pull it up because there is a really good verse in there that has kind of been my driving force. And of course, like, we have 3 years worth of blog post content, and I have to literally go back to the first one, so it's going to take me a while. But when it comes to also, like, confirmation too, like, finding those friends outside of the team members that are like, this is needed and this is good. And I think there's been a lot of people that who have spoken into my life when it comes to the mission and vision of Boldly Seeking, where they're like, this is needed and this is good, and we're excited for what you are going to do and your team is going to do. Oh, we're getting close. It's, like, literally all the way at the bottom. One more page.
Sorry
Go
to
check
drop
out
such a
all
hard
of our
question.
blogs on our website,
Yeah.
because there's a backlog of lots of them, and guest writers too. It's been really fun to hear what, like, they have to say, and all those studies that we've written. I feel like that just really opens up the Bible in a new way that maybe you just glance over before and you haven't really thought of it before. And just those different studies that you could read with a friend too is really interesting and cool, and it's fun to, like, it does take a lot to write them, but it's also really fun to go back and be like, oh yeah, I wrote that and that was really cool to read.
Perfect. So there's a couple verses, two in particular, that are kind of the foundation for boldly seeking. And the first one is Philippians 1:9-11. And this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God. And then Ephesians 3:16-19. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all of the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. And I think like that is like 100% like our prayer behind this ministry, of like that we can come together to know more of who God is, to be strengthened by the love of God, and to know and be rooted and established in our identity of who God is and how much he does love us.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I just have one more question for you.
Oh no.
So
Oh no.
Don't worry, it's not a terrible one. So we have gone through 3 years of growth, and we are continue to grow. So what are some goals for year 4 and for as far in the future? I mean, that's a wide question, but for the next year and beyond, I guess I'll say it that way.
Yeah, I think as we have been able to dream up Boldly Seeking at our annual meetings in January, a couple of them do come to mind. One being able to do more events like in the community for young adults, and just like really like the one quote that struck me, and the one statistic that struck me the other Sunday, when I was speaking with a good friend, Eric, who is the director of Youth for Christ, is like Duluth is ranked number 9 in the entire nation for mental health. And that struck me. I was like, a beautiful place like Duluth. And of course, and now Duluth is on the map of something, and it's not something super great. And it's like, okay, what can we do to change that? And it starts with the youth, and it starts with the young adults of today who are entering a world where there's so much division and there's so much uncertainty. So one dream is just create more events for young adults, whether that's small worship nights or conferences. It'd be awesome to become published authors. That's a whole work in progress too. But also I would say another dream that has might be like years down the road, but I've been talking with a couple people about it, and it's a really cool story, is to take this to a large arena, to build a conference, to be in a large arena. Like you see Passion and Together 2022 and all these huge conferences that are always in Dallas or Atlanta or wherever else in the South. But it's like, what's up here for the young adults up here? It's like Duluth is ranked number 9 for mental health, and there is where is something where people can go to get filled back up? Where is a place that people can go to where they don't have to spend thousands of money and travel and lodging and food to attend a conference, where it's like they could have one in their own backyard? And I remember one time I was practicing for a teaching in my room, and I am always that person that like I'll walk around my room and like talk and like pretend I'm in front of people as I'm practicing, just kind of like get it all out. And I had this outer body experience as I was doing this, of being in front of thousands of young adults in Amsoil Arena. Like, we were hosting a conference, there was thousands of people there, and I was preaching this message. And it happened every single time I practiced that week. And I had called my old college roommate, Emily, before I was supposed to go speak, and I was just like, hey, could you pray over me? Like, I'm just feeling like kind of off, and I don't really know why. And she prayed for me. She was like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. Like, I've just been having these like weird outer body experiences of be like kind of this almost like this fire being ignited of like where we could go, and being like, that's where I want to go. And it's like this massive conference that just really moves people to take that next step with Jesus and being bold with their faith, however that may look. And she's like, how long have you been having these like quote unquote visions? And I was like, I don't know, maybe like the last week or so, like as I've been preparing for this. She's like, I've been praying this last week that God would show you where he's going to take you. Like, the fact that lines up, and like it gives me chills and goosebumps of her to say like, I wanted God to show you this week where he could take you, so you don't become discouraged and you know that this is the path you need to be on. And I would say, like, whenever that happens, like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, like, that would ultimately be the goal. But it's like, there's so much of the journey to get there, and I'm so excited for what that's going to be.
Well, Jenny, do you have any last questions or comments for Rebecca before we wrap this up?
When's our next photo shoot? When are we going to do another? I love taking pictures, and we're trying to get all of our team members back again.
That is a great question. I think we'll have to consult the Google Calendar on
Okay,
that one.
we'll have to let our schedules align.
Yes, yes.
And when it gets warmer out, because it is like
Yes,
negative
please.
degrees.
It's negative by the time we are recording this right now.
Yes. Oh. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for coming and sitting in the hot seat. I'm very glad that you got to be a guest on your own podcast, and it was really awesome to get to just hear a little more about your insight into this ministry. So, for everyone watching, be sure to check out our social medias and listen to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Find us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. We are all over the board, and
We're
we'll probably
all
expand it.
over.
Yes.
And with this being anniversary week, we have a lot happening to
yes.
celebrate 3 years of Boldly Seeking.
Yes.
So make sure you do keep up with all of our social media to know what's happening. There'll be a few fun surprises along the way.
Yes.
So
I'm
be on
excited
the
for them.
lookout. I'm so thankful for the two of you for saying yes to not only me, but my dream, but also this team and the mission and vision behind Boldly Seeking. And this is a celebration for all of us.
Yes,
not
it
just
is.
me. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday.